Welcome to the next episode of the Graybeard Wisdom Podcast, where host Mark Freeman delves into the dynamic ideas and innovations shaping the future of food service. In this conversation with Laura Lentz, design principal at Culinary Advisors, and Karen Malody, owner of Culinary Options, where we move from conceptual food trends to the practical frontier of kitchen design and equipment innovation. This episode explores how AI-driven ovens, connected kitchen systems, and emerging robotics are reshaping what's possible in food service operations and what it actually takes to get there. Laura and Karen bring decades of design and strategic expertise to questions operators are grappling with right now. How do you evaluate equipment when the landscape has become increasingly complex? What infrastructure do these new technologies demand? And most critically, how do you transition existing facilities toward future-ready capabilities without wholesale replacement? Their perspective reveals a future where food service leaders aren't just managing kitchens, they're leveraging intelligent equipment, strategic design constraints, and emerging automation to navigate labor challenges, maximize efficiency, and prepare for what's coming next in institutional food service. Let's jump in.
Well, good morning, ladies. How are you today? And welcome to the Graybeard Wisdom Podcast.
Thank you.
Good morning.
I think this is going to be an exciting time. It's kind of an expansion of the conversation that Karen and I have had. Actually, we've had, section 1 and section 2 of Karen, and now this is, I get to welcome you, Laura, to the conversation and kind of move into an area that maybe Karen and I haven't really discussed, because we went into a lot around menuing and what's coming in the future with food as medicine and all those kinds of different things in our past podcasts. But this one is going to kind of move in more to the equipment and design aspect, and it's really great to have you become part of this conversation. So welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, so I guess to start out, maybe tell us a little bit about what you're bumping into in your business and when you're out with clients, and what you're seeing in the way of, food trends and impact they may have on equipment and design, and maybe some ahas that you've had out there that you could help our audience start to kind of get into this conversation around innovation and technology.
Yeah. For a couple years maybe is too many, but for some time I've been thoughtful, right? We're all seeing a number of great advances in technology and just new equipment ideas. To be honest, even the last NAFM, which I know was some time ago now, but I went into that thinking, we weren't going to see all that much. And then what I feel like I saw now, it was sort of the beginning of a bit of a revolution. And it even felt like little steps at that moment. And now it feels like some bigger leaps that we're starting to really see. So I think this is heading towards a tipping point. What it makes me most thoughtful of is, in the design world, we are creating things that aren't even built yet. We are creating things that are, in some cases, years down the road. So how do I wrap my head around what might be happening right now or next month, or a new product in May at the NRA show, with what a client is going to need in 5 years, right? And maybe it's also trying to transport myself into the future and say, what do I think this even looks like? And how do I future-proof what I see in a design on a plan right now to something that at least is going to be workable, right? What the worst thing you want to do is be working on a design now. It gets through to construction and it's like, holy cow, we can't use any of this. So I'm thoughtful about it. I think, like I said before, I think we're reaching a tipping point, which is to say, from my perspective and what I've seen, there aren't necessarily any sure things, this works across the market segment. If anything, I'm seeing a bit of a fragmentation. So based on specific peculiarities that a client has or things that are unique to them, there are different solutions that in my mind seem to be rising to the top. So, overall, an example of that might be overall workplace becoming more decentralized, for example. For some clients, that might look like a concentrated set of decentralized options. For other clients, that might look like, the solutions that are food service completely on opposite sides of the building or the campus. So I think that the dynamics change based on a client more than they did before.
Well, yeah, and I think you bring up a good point related to, time, if you will. So, like you say, you might get a project now and it might be completed in 2 years. And the way this technology stuff is going now, it's happening so fast that 2 years from now in technology is everything could change, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you do have you bumped into any of that kind of stuff with your clients, Karen, related to time and
Oh, I would say that trying to figure that out from a culinary standpoint is equally challenging.
Yeah.
No, I
yeah.
mean, when I start doing the research for things like this podcast and I see that, that there's now equipment that people can actually grow lab meat in their kitchens, which certainly has to do with supply chain and much bigger issues. But I mean, when you see that happening, and I do think, to Laura's point, I think this is also why modularity and flexibility in design really mimics the same challenge and dilemma on the culinary side. So the more we can shift things around and go over here with a certain kind of ventless grill and do a pop-up really helps operators stay current with what the food trends are without having to wonder how they do that in a big, huge kitchen that's kind of clunky, shall we say.
Well, and it gets to me it gets a little kludgy because you talk about the modular piece of it, but ovens are changing with AI, and so how do you put a different oven in by just changing the AI piece of it or the technology piece of it? It gets a little bit difficult, if you will, because pieces of equipment are changing as fast as the technology is too, right?
Well, yeah, Laura, I'd love your thought about this. One of the things historically that has prevented too much modularity and flexibility is the hood system. You can't really move a hood around. Although
Mhm.
in doing this research, I see that some portable hood systems are now being developed. So maybe that, and I don't mean just ventless equipment, but even a bigger effort.
Mhm.
So how so Laura, what's your thought about this whole hood system situation and the one that being kind of the one thing that doesn't allow for flexibility?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I've been thinking. There are, and hoods are a great example, but to be honest, there's at least a handful in any kitchen that are still of items and equipment and pieces, walk-in coolers, for example, your loading dock location, and then, wherever the servery and seating and those types of things. There are just some basic building infrastructure elements that I think any design is going to work around. To be honest, what I could also see happening is, the exhaust hood is probably not going to be changing from breakfast to lunch, right? But if the equipment underneath the exhaust hood is able to change between
Mhm.
breakfast and lunch or one week to the next, because let's say you want one location where you can do variety and change your menu from week to week or something because you're satisfying customer needs. The the idea then would be you need a space to keep all of this equipment that you're not using. So in my mind, your hood, where we had kind of started to do some kitchen designs where we wanted to have configurability, flexibility, modularity underneath. We still kind of had this driving desire to still have everything able to be plugged in at a given time. And I think what this is going to encourage us to do is to say, actually, no, your hood is only going to be able to be 1500 CFM, let's say, or something, which means you only get X amount of pieces of equipment underneath it. And so I think you're going to start to need storage for the equipment that you may not be using at a given time. And I think we're going to have to get creative, for example, hood depths. So if you have a combi oven, you typically can have a deeper depth of a hood than you might have for a shallower, more modular piece of equipment, right? So how will our air needs adapt to that one hood that will want to be able to perhaps do a full-size combi oven for a big catering event, and then a Monday when it's a low volume and you just have a few people on site and you're going to feed them. So I'm seeing that yes, the hood might still be fixed, but the moving of everything underneath it is going to bring us changes in design, in how we think about design.
That makes me wonder, is that easier to do with electric or gas or vice versa? This modularity, replacing of equipment under a hood?
Easier, probably, yes. I would say it is easier if you're sticking to one utility. But I think if you just think about the difference between being able to unplug something or plug something in versus disconnecting a gas line.
Yes, right.
I mean, I think, it's certainly easier to imagine it with electric. Now, that's not to say that electric, we have some clients who don't want anyone touching a 480 or 460 volt connection, right? So I think we'll see some changes there. And what does it mean for when we think about modular kitchens and things changing? One of the favorites in a servery for some time has been a pizza oven, right? With a big old gas flame. Is it completely gone? Is that a piece of equipment that we will see in the future or not? Those are the things that I am thoughtful about.
Well, and to add complexity to that too, Laura, you must, it have to balance, I guess, the idea that, is it a new build or is it an existing kitchen that you have to redesign? Because
Sure.
like Karen was saying, the hood system is probably fixed in the existing kitchen, and so you gotta kind of work everything around that. And same thing with the loading dock and the locations and all that kind of stuff. Is there some, I don't know, some magic dust you can sprinkle on that to be able to say, okay, here's how we do it in an existing kitchen, or is it you just tear the whole thing out and start over?
Well, I think, at a minimum, I think consultants and our profession of food service design consulting in this case, the knowledge that we bring for the structure of a building and what it does or doesn't do, what it means we can or can't do, I think is certainly going to be more of a qualifier for clients in the future, architects clients, I mean, right? Like if I'm looking to partner with a design consultant, I'm probably going to want someone who can help understand the structure of a building in an existing space and where I should or shouldn't do things. There's going to be more value to that. So I do think that will give our clients or architectural clients, pause or thought for who they're hiring. Other things like, here's an example that was coming up as I was prepping for this was, I have a client I've worked with for years who doesn't like floor troughs. It's a specific choice for a number of odd reasons, or not odd reasons, but very specific reasons that I won't go into. But their favorite kettle assembly is one that is one of those where you can use a drain tray assembly and pour items into. You know, as I'm going through this, I'm going, well, gosh, do we even have floor troughs dedicated for tilt skillets and kettles in the future? You know, if your kettle might come and go, do we even have
Yeah,
kettles? I guess is a whole other question. But
Right.
if your equipment's going to come and go, are you even putting in floor troughs anymore, right? If I want to be able to have it modular, I think
Right.
there's a lot of those questions that are going to
Think
come up.
think of the money that would save too. I
Yeah.
mean, honestly, you know, Mark, this is interesting. What you were just saying, Laura, um, between the issue of current facilities, many of which are big, you could almost call them central kitchens, um, and the kind of explosion of ventless mixed in there. What I have seen some clients doing, and I want to know if you see this, they're able to prepare things perhaps in their production kitchens or even out on the line, and then send that food out to a ventless pop-up station
Hmm.
to, to create a sense of not just innovation, but flexibility and freshness and something new. And the thing that has fascinated me when I see people doing that, uh, people love those pop-up stations. It's something different. It's a very specific menu item. And, the bulk of the production, all the production has really been done in the kitchen. And then induction is our friend with ventless equipment. And I see that happening more and more to get away from everything being served in the big cafeteria.
Hmm. No, I definitely agree with that. I think there's going to be a population size at which looking at a level of central production and whether it's a central commissary or kitchen, whether it's depending on the population, something that's even smaller. But what I would kind of lump into this whole category of advanced meal production. But the more that you can, and in a high quality way, the more that you can prepare food in advance and with less labor or in your shoulder periods, right? So certainly what you find is a lot of discussion out there about how we are going to use every moment of the kitchen and its time for preparation of service. So, one scenario was, you can reduce your waste by bringing in someone to prep in addition in a morning shift, right? As an outcome where AI might deduce this from a current operation. And so it gets you thinking about how the kitchen is going to need to be able to change and flex if individuals are coming in, but also that there's going to be an importance to being able to have central kitchens that can benefit from all of the power that will be brought by the future and AI, but not losing sight of the quality. And if anything, I think we're going to get more focused on quality because the moment we're paying, money for options that aren't going to delight us, that we aren't going to enjoy. Um, an example might be lettuce that has gotten too cold and gets a little bit wilted because it sat, in a refrigerator, or maybe it's lettuce that got wilted just because it was kind of dried out, like, those types of scenarios. I think there's going to be much less of a tolerance for that. So I think what
Mhm.
it makes me thoughtful about is how the skill set we're going to be looking for in chefs to run our kitchens is going to change, right? And it's going to be more about that ability to understand and work for the equipment, or work with the equipment, I guess, in order to get that end result that you need. Certainly, an understanding of the equipment and how it works is going to be more important. But I definitely think that's going to change. I think we're going to see a lot more need for centralization of certainly production and kitchens in general. I do think induction is going to just offer so much of what we need with this flexibility and modularity, that I don't see, there's certainly other options out there. There's certainly folks looking at it, but I think it's going to be the powerhouse in the future for sure.
Wow. I have to say, you two just exploded my mind with a lot of questions and thoughts, right, around this central kitchen pop-up kind of a thing. Because just recently I visited a K-12 kitchen, and it was a central kitchen. It was huge. And they were I talked to the chef quite a bit, and they were working on the quality of the food and make sure that the quality of the food is phenomenal. And so you're right, it stays with, that high quality. But I mean, the equipment, I just got blown away by they have a machine that opens up cans, number 10 cans, and dumps it into a vat that they pick up with a tractor and put it into a steam skillet that's, it's huge,
Yeah.
right? And so to me, the design of the kitchen, when you go to central kitchen, becomes completely different, and also again run by a lot of AI and technology that's in the equipment to be able to make it work right. But the other thing that pops into my head related to this is the idea of hospitality. I mean, I come from a corporate world, and everything was done in front of the customer. You chop the carrots, you bake the bread, you do all of this stuff in front of the customer because it was entertaining and the customer really resonated with the food. In a sense, with these pop-ups and a central kitchen, that goes away. The hospitality happens at the point of sale. So as they're dishing up your food at the pop-up, that's where the hospitality thing happens. And so to me, the whole idea of this kitchen changing in a to me a monumental way is just huge. It's just
Well,
huge.
Mark, it's no different than and why I wrote the article on hospitality being an antidote to loneliness. When you really think about the thing about technology on any level, be it back of the house, front of house, equipment, etc., is the bugaboo for many has been now you go to a kiosk, you order, you go pick up your food. There's no interaction, there's no hospitality, there's no human connection. I mean, that is one of the biggest challenges that I see
Yeah.
operators facing as they go to front of the house technologies. There are
Well, but
ways, but that you can deal with that. There are ways to make that not be void of hospitality, but I don't see enough people really finding a way to make up that difference.
Well, kind of getting back to technology, hospitality may happen. Like I said, my agent is named Ginger. Maybe that happens with Ginger, and Ginger knows so much about that kitchen and so much about that food that the interaction, the hospitality happens with an AI agent, not a human.
Um, I mean, robots that pick up and deliver food to tables right now have interactions
Yes.
with, so and that's why, my point in the article, and I'm sticking to it, is that technology and hospitality do not have to be antithetical or enemies by any means. But because when I look at these things, and Laura, we've been reading some similar articles, there's some types of equipment out there now that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
This plasma, I mean, 5,000 degrees. What is that? And then the other thing is, I think, Mark, I've shared this harangue with you, so I'll be very brief. Everyone's hung up on multifunctional equipment, multifunctional equipment. Two things about that. It's only multifunctional if you know how to use it.
Exactly.
And secondly, it can't be multifunctional and do 12 things at once.
Mhm.
So
Yet.
you have to, no, so, but I'm getting there. I know where you're going with that. So that's certainly why some manufacturers, and Laura, I'm sure you spec this a lot, have different compartments that now have different temperatures. So that really helps.
Yeah.
I think more importantly, let's say a combi. You have to really, if you've got a combi or two or three, you have to really look at your production schedules and time. When am I using that combi for this versus that? And as opposed to, oops, I forgot to redo my production. I need to bake something, grill something, and roast something all at the same at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Well, that
Yeah.
multifunctional equipment can't do that.
Yet.
That plasma burner that you found, Karen, I mean, that really was fascinating. And just
Yeah.
to share where my head went, right, was maybe there is an answer for, and maybe I'm kind of stuck in my own ways, but maybe there is an answer for the gas flame of a pizza oven suddenly moving over to electric. I definitely, it's a cool find to go look at just and try and wrap your head around how on earth they're even doing it. I mean,
I know.
I on some level appreciated this one video I saw that was basically it's a minute faster than induction on boiling water. I'll challenge that because I think the video used a pretty low kW induction burner. And so I challenge it a
Oh,
little bit maybe, but boy, it was a cool thing to just think about. I mean, it's cool. It's
Well,
cool.
maybe for our audience, explain it a little bit so they can get their head around it. Because again, I think it's probably something that's new. Um, and I'll put that on hold for just a second and respond to Karen as well, because
Yeah.
I think, combi ovens, like you say, everything happens at the same time. But again, I think AI is going to play a role in determining that ahead of time so that AI will know that you need three things at the same time. And then the oven will be able, or whatever the steamer or whatever you're using is going to know to turn the steam on now and cook all three of them at the same time, right? I mean, so I think that
yeah,
that's coming, right? But
it
anyway,
is. It's
talk a little
probably
bit about
here.
the plasma thing, because I think that's, again, something that's relatively new and our audience may not know about. So I don't know who wants to start with that.
Laura, go for it. Because I still,
Okay.
it's like, I can read what this said is plasma burners, and there is one called Plasma One, sear at 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit using 90% less energy than gas. And
Yeah,
then
so
so
no, go
what does
ahead,
that
go
look
ahead.
like?
Well, but
Oh,
I think about plasma as part of my blood. So does it run on blood?
I do, damned if I know. And then on top of that, I love this. So sonic seasoning devices enhance marinades via ultrasound,
Hmm.
while AI ovens tweak recipes in real time
Yeah.
for humidity, altitude, I thought it said attitude, or ingredient quality. It's like, hello, what? I mean, are you speccing these things, Laura? They're out there, I guess.
No, no. I mean the plasma burner, I went and watched a YouTube video from someone who had bought the product in China. It was the Plasma One, and then brought it to somewhere in Europe and plugged it into the wall. Definitely had put it on a transformer, but it was an electric, plug that you saw, and turned the thing on, and it flamed like a gas burner does, right? So picture a single hob gas burner that we'd be putting butane in or something. It was an electric plasma that came out of burner holes, and you put a pot on top of it and put a quart of water in it, and he was testing boiling a quart of water on this versus boiling a quart of water on an induction range. I mean, I could definitely see searing products 5,000 degrees. Honestly, I read that and I'm sure there are more products than the one video I saw, but you know what started coming up for my brain is holy cow. First of all, OSHA is going to have a fit about an open flame that is 5,000. I mean, same kind of fit,
Well,
I guess, as you would about gas, but wow, from a code perspective, right? So,
right.
holy wow, there's a whole set of codes that haven't even been envisioned yet. And don't even get me started on how is our government going to be able to react to all of this in some amount of time. But also, the notion of if it really is something that can cook at that high of a degree, I mean, forget how we were trying to get all of our heads wrapped around cooking with induction. Imagine trying to cook with I mean, you can't. I don't even know how you move that fast.
Without
So
incinerating everything.
exactly,
Yeah.
without burning every bloody thing you're cooking. So, that's where my head went. And then I started to think about the wares. I mean, am I warping every single pan I'm trying to cook on? How does that work? So it got my mind spinning kind of in a similar way as induction has, but it was definitely fascinating to think about something faster than induction.
Well,
Well,
kind of
you
getting back to your client though. So how, like we were talking earlier, things are changing so fast that your clients' heads are spinning as well. And how do you engage with them to keep them up to date with everything that you've learned, but then also in a sense selling to them to say this is coming, this is we should put it in now, or you know this is coming and maybe it won't happen, and so there's this back and forth kind of a thing. I mean, how are your clients trying to understand all of this, right?
I mean, right now, on being fully transparent, I'm seeing the gamut. I mean, I still have some clients who are in the middle, as a number of us are, of labor struggles, right? So one client needs to replace a flight type dishwasher and is really struggling with even the thought of the self diagnostics that are kind of already pretty much out there on flight type dishwashers. And I get it because the concern is the manpower and the people to be able to keep up with whatever is self diagnosed about the machine. In this case, I think it stems from hard water, but all of these things are, hard water, for example, being a really good example in my mind of a real challenge to what can be a very expensive AI powered dishwasher in the future, right? If if the water circulating through it, and of course then you can go down a rabbit hole of, well, maybe you don't need to be washing with water. Maybe there's something else that you can be cleaning dishes with. So
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, like
Yes.
UV, UV light. The other thing that struck me, and again, I'm looking because this was just so interesting to me, this touchless hygiene innovations, because of the heightened concern about health and safety and food safety, et cetera, which I don't think will ever not be with us. That self-cleaning surfaces with UV light, nano coating, breaking down grease, autonomous dishwashing drones, which already exist. And you brought up, I think, an important point, Laura, and it's always puzzled me, Mark, as to how and why so many of these technologies come from other countries.
Laura,
That
Laura hit it on the head. It's the government
totally,
regulations.
exactly,
Yeah.
try to, we whatever, modify and demand so many things from a code standpoint in our country that they sometimes don't make it over here at all. Or when they do, it's already been used for 5, 10, 20 years somewhere else.
yeah.
So I don't know what will happen with regards to that, but what I do know, and I want your thought on this, Laura, the attention to sustainability and energy savings has never been so acute as it is now.
Mhm.
We worry about it in kitchens, we worry about it front and back of house, and the equipment manufacturers, almost everything they're doing, that is a top three. We've got to focus on this if we're going to
Yeah.
develop this thing.
Why is that? Is that cost because of the cost of power?
Well, I think certainly that's part of it, but I also think it's just sort of, I don't know, sort of, it's cultural. It's I think that we are trying to be good citizens, and I don't believe it was understood, truly understood, historically, just what energy hogs kitchens are in buildings.
Yeah.
Architects are becoming more sustainability driven in their designs. So I don't know, Laura, I'd like your take on that. Why is it at a
Yeah.
peak now?
Well, and I want to circle back to and kind of include in that what Mark you had asked because I didn't really answer it. Um, it is a very natural response, and I think a response that we have had for some time. As someone who has talked to so many clients in the past, especially if I am a chef on the front line, it is a very natural response to feel as though you need more. And I think the biggest thing that being more modular is going to, or the idea of kitchens being able to change, and frankly, the idea of existing renovations is going to be about how do I accomplish this without wanting more. And in my mind, the example I'm thinking of is CFM and exhaust hood, right? So many times, individuals, I go into a project and they want to add more hood capacity, they want to add equipment. And I think, what we need to be doing is challenging that and saying, do you really need more hood? Or do you need this hood, this footprint, this volume of air that we're pulling out of this building? Do we need this to be more flexible, right? So change the hood, put a demand control ventilation system on it, put universal ansel on it, and then, it can be designed so that you can take that char broiler right out of the space and bring in a 4 burner range. I think equipment is got some work to do to be able to do that in a scenario where it's breakfast to lunch, right? So the classic issue has been the flue on the back of the char broiler is 500 degrees, and now I'm trying to push it through a kitchen, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
somebody doesn't realize it right, and my aisleways are too small, and I can't get the equipment out. Like, so I think there's even an art to that as a design, and that maybe is arguably what seems quite simple to do, but even that I think comes with some of its challenges in the right now. But I do think that when it comes to existing designs, challenging the need for more, or how can I get more without increasing my CFM, right? How can I get more without feeling like I need even more equipment, right? Or maybe it's even as simple as using AI for some of the basics. So I've gone into many design meetings where I come out of the plan and we need 18 gas burner eyes in order to accomplish a menu, right? So leverage AI to figure out how you can do it with 6 or with 12 or whatever the
Yep.
right answer is, but get it to something that is more programmed and where you are using less of the equipment and less of all the things that we want to kind of grab on. I think we need to challenge ourselves.
Well, Laura, the thing that always comes up in my mind also that gets left out in that equation many times is hello, menu engineering.
Yeah,
You
true.
know,
Right,
I mean,
right. Yeah.
there are ways to to do more with less by being very, very strategic with menu engineering. And something that's fascinating me, Mark, and you'll love this, is AI is now can really be a tool in planning menus around what exists. And the chef
Oh,
doesn't
yeah.
even have to not the chef always needs to think about it, but I mean, not on the level that they may have thought about it previously. The AI will do a lot of that work for us. And I'm amazed at how some simple, because I do a lot of that work. So it's like, have you thought about this, that, or the other on the menu? Have you thought about the fact that you've got this expensive pizza oven sitting here that only does 3% of your total sales? How do you maximize that real estate by doing other, I mean, there's so much that can be done with what exists that often is not considered.
Yeah, totally. And we haven't even stepped into humanoid robotics or, having humans, non-humans do human work, right? And to me, that's going to play into, this kitchen design as well. I mean, I think Laura, you were talking about, you know, working with a hot oven, moving it in and out of a space, right? Well, if a robot's doing that, you don't have to worry about the UI rating or whatever because the
Yeah.
robot is you know able to do that, right? And so then, but the robot needs electricity, it needs power of some sort to be able to manage what they're doing, right? And so to me, a lot of it comes back to energy and how much energy, and to take it way off into space. And I don't want to derail this, but you know, the cost of energy right now is relatively expensive, and that's why I think there's this and in short supply, if you will, and so there's this concern around conserving it and whatever. But in the next 5 years, that's going to change. Electricity is going to be captured outside the Earth's atmosphere and beamed back, right? So to me, we'll have an abundant amount of energy to be able to do that. And so then that solves the energy problem in a sense in the kitchen and maybe allows us to bring more energy into the kitchen to be able to keep the robots happy, if you will. And then this is just Mark's brain kind of
No, we
daydreaming.
have to find another source for I mean, everything's becoming electrified. I mean, that's a dilemma, true dilemma waiting to happen if we don't
Yeah.
figure these things out. So Laura,
So,
are you finding,
yeah.
I'm very curious about this. Because of, I mean, if you really get clever and you think about modularity and menu engineering and all that, are you finding that hood size can be reduced if you put some ventless equipment on the line? Do you see ventless equipment being placed on lines much?
I do, for sure. I see a lot of regulation issues is not the right word, but a lot of challenges right now with ventless equipment being understood. So I think you really need to understand and to talk about that for a minute, ventless equipment from a building perspective comes down to air changes. And so we really have to understand, and as a designer, educate engineering teams on having ventless equipment be something that solves a solution versus something that doesn't get enough air, so it overheats, so it stinks up the space, so da 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 da. So
Right.
I'm seeing that, and I'm also seeing that as a result of some of the challenges with installations that haven't gone right and haven't had those air changes. Just had a client with a question the other week about their HJ, authority having jurisdiction, is not allowing them to stack certified ventless pieces of equipment because they're concerned that the statement was that you can't accomplish the air changes. And frankly, I would challenge that, but it's not my call, right? So
Yeah.
you do what you got to do. So I think I think there's that happening with ventless equipment. But I definitely see it in issues where I've got it on a project where running ductwork was going to be a big challenge. I have it on a temporary space. We're using a number of pieces of ventless equipment. And in fact, we're then planning to move them into a kitchen for the permanent installation and put them under a hood. So take off the ventless hood on top of it
Uh-huh,
because filters and other things can be really expensive. So again, I think it's kind of one off for a situation. I don't think you can say that the perfect answer right now is a combination of vents and ventless equipment. But I'm sure there are many solutions where or many scenarios where that will end up being a solution.
right.
It's often that you want to put cooking equipment or something in a location where there isn't a hood. And certainly, let me combine this. What's going through my mind is combining this with our discussion about modularity, right? So
Yeah.
maybe it's some other station for breakfast, but then for lunch, I want it to become a pizza station and I've got one footprint as a pop-up, right? Well, all day long, I'm going to be putting a ventless oven in there for the lunch period and then taking it back out, right? So especially if my breakfast is a cold option, then I probably wouldn't want to install a permanent hood. But the flip side could be true. If you want cooking at breakfast and cooking at lunch, well, then maybe it does make sense to install the hood up above and be able to interchange the equipment below. So I do
Yeah.
think there are multiple right solutions
One size doesn't fit all.
right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to see that start to change and some real good solutions come out of everything.
Well, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was going to take us down a different path though, so if you want to
Go
keep
for
on.
it. No, go for it.
Okay, so the other thing that I kept being driven by is let's talk about chefs and even what a chef is going to mean in the future, right? And from a design perspective, for some time, one of the conversations that would come up in my projects has been, does that chef even need an office? I mean, sure, typically they need a dedicated network for the computer and for all of the interfacing, right? But that seems to have been getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And the moment you wanted to have a conference table, to have a conference with 4 people, it just, oh, that's too much space, right? But now to me, I'm sitting here going, well, is this chef who's going to need their ginger agent along with them, right? Is it on a device? Is it in their ear? Is it like in a central kitchen, it becomes a cornerstone of a kitchen. And so sight over that kitchen is critical. If you have true AI functioning to tell you you need to cut your milk order and you need to increase something else, well then being able to get that milk order cut and kind of be at a central control tower, control station, to me is going to be more and more critical. So what was one of the things that was going through my mind is, wow, I mean, we've always wanted a chef to be able to be at the heart of a kitchen and seeing everything, right? The reality of that, in particular in workplace, is always a challenge. And we've kind of said a number of times, well, we want them out on the floor. We want them walking around and moving and talking to everyone. And some of what I think AI would drive us to in design is going to lead us to the opposite, right? Like that there's a central command center and that there's multiple screens perhaps, or some amount of capability for centralizing the technology. Now, Mark, I imagine you maybe have some thoughts on that because I'm sure you've kind of gone down some rabbit holes, and Karen, maybe you too, but
Yeah.
but boy,
No, I
those
have to.
pictures of what does that even look like started to come up. I think kind of going back to what you were talking about, Mark, with central school systems, right? Where we would often want to put a mezzanine for a chef's office so they can actually
Right.
look down over, then
Right.
you can see tray line, you can see the cook chill part of the kitchen. I'm kind of making it, you can see cold prep where all the number 10 cans are getting open. So how I don't know. And do you even need to see? Because someone else is going to be your eyes for you. Who the heck knows?
Yes, that's where I'm going, and it's interesting, and Karen, you know this as well, that I had an opportunity to go to CES this year in Las Vegas, and glasses were the big thing, right? So you have cameras on your glasses, and then it's absorbing all of this data. And as a chef walks around the kitchen and is taking pictures of all of this that's going on, and probably not seeing everything that's going on, the AI glasses are. They're seeing everything that goes on. And so as a result, what they're doing is talking to the chef, because there's earphones on these glasses, that's talking to the chef and saying, okay, you've got a backup problem here. You've got, this machine is probably in the wrong spot in the kitchen. And so if you moved it over here 6 inches or 8 inches, or put it on that side of the wall, that it's going to perform better for you and you're going to get more production out of it. I think that's where this is going. And the idea then of actually training a chef, right, is going to happen on their inside of their glasses. So, there's been a bazillion robots that have chopped a carrot in the right way, just to julienne it correctly, to put it on the plate exactly how the chef wants to do it. And now the training exercise shows up on your glasses, the chef's glasses, to be able to then actually, while they're cutting it, is telling them, no, move your knife 3 degrees this way or whatever. I mean, it's getting pretty sophisticated, but again, I think that's where this is going. And so, they had a panel discussion with Tyler Florence as one of the panelists, and then two robotic people next to him, and it was chef versus robots. And Tyler's take on it is that chefs are going to be where they put together a plate. That's not, he says, that's not going to change. But how that plate gets made before it ever gets to the plate is going to be done either by robots or by trained individuals through AI, through glasses, through a lot of different things. And so in his world, you still need the chef. And I'm in agreement with that. I think that there needs to be a human that says, yes, that's the way I want it. And then it goes on from there, right?
Exactly. And I was thinking about that a lot, Laura, when you mentioned that in your email. And my thought was, I don't want to see unnecessary dumbing down of the human capacity and the knowledge base that I still feel very strongly a true chef needs to understand food and cooking and what happens when you cook. I mean, they need a certain amount of knowledge to be able to use AI or anything else. But it further, just now when you were speaking, both of you, perhaps there becomes a key new position that doesn't maybe exist right now, which is sort of an IT person sitting in that office, managing some element of this while the chef or the kitchen manager is out and about, perhaps with those glasses on. What else came to mind, Mark, when you said the capacity of these glasses? It's kind of like they can do time and motion studies for you.
Yes, yes.
Because there'll be probably fewer and fewer people, humans, doing time and motion studies, which is a whole other topic of the future of consulting. So, wow. I mean, and again, we don't know how quickly. Are we talking 5 years from now, we're going to have robotic dishwashers, I mean, how does an operator today and how does a consultant trying to be trusted advisors to people see that far out when you're, to your point, Laura, starting a project now that could easily not come to fruition for 7 years, 5 years. Now, in the restaurant world, it would never be that kind of timeline.
Right.
But in the non-commercial world where we're talking building buildings and, hospitals, etc., it is 5 to 7 years, very typically. So
Well,
how,
I think,
what do we do?
and I mean, you guys live in the world, I don't, but looking from the outside in, you have to build flexibility into the schedule. If it's going to 7 years out in the world of AI is huge, huge. And so
It's
when
ridiculous.
you build a 7 year plan, you've got to build for change. You just got to build for change and know that when you say, okay, this piece of equipment is going to work in 7 years, that it may not. There may be a new piece of equipment that comes in that's in 2 years, it's going to replace it completely. So to me, you guys, to me, and that's maybe where the consulting into this and the human part of it happens, is that you need to be there watching what's going on in the world so that
Yeah.
you can bring it in and know that it's going to change the whole design of the kitchen in a sense,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Well,
absolutely.
here's what I think, though. I think that one of the hardest things to do in a design project, and I want to say especially in food service, but I know it's true of many different things, is to do this visioning. So I think that as best you can, if you are a client who is looking at a project that's up and coming, is to find sources to challenge yourself. Find things to think about, like what I said earlier about, do you really need more exhaust, or what is the right amount of exhaust?
Yeah.
I think we need resources. I am very skeptical if I'm looking at a plan and there are a lot of vertical walls in it, as an example, or little wing walls that carve everything out. And now let me define this. When I say wall, I mean either a metal stud or wood based, but a wall that is this kind of typical 6 inches thick that you're going to be able to see on a 2D plan. If I'm seeing a kitchen that has a lot of walls in it, I am really starting to question those, because those just become something that you may not want to have 7 years from now.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of been around in architecture for some time to look at partitions, would maybe be the word I would use, but something that's more a screen or a fabric or whatnot, but that's not a wall. So, and there are still going to be walls that are required. There are walls around kitchens that are defined by code that have to be there, right? But I'm going to be questioning. I'm going to want someone on my team who's helping me do the best I can to look into the future. I'm going to want someone who is challenging me. I'm going to be questioning, if I have a designer who's got a whole bunch of walls on a plan, I'm really questioning that. I'm challenging that. If everything is built in and the counters are very permanent and, very traditional, for lack of better words, I'm going to really be thinking about that. Now, granted, honestly, the flip side, or the other side of that coin is, well, if you build it now, in 7 years, you're probably going to want to be working on the next renovation anyway, right? So if we have 7 years, well, that means we probably got a whole other round to go.
Yeah.
So just do your best and move forward. But I think that those are the things that come up in my mind. Strategy behind how we're going to be able to equip what I see as workstations. I mean, I think glasses are a really cool idea, Mark. That gets my brain going. But um, and how does that work? How does that work for a team? What does it look like? It's kind of, I think the best we can do right now is imagine what that maybe looks like and try and work it into whatever our current confines are right now.
Well, and Mark, I think you're attending that, which I've been tempted to do myself, is how, if certain technologies exist already in one silo of humanity, why are we not converting some of that over into another silo today? I mean, who's using these glasses, for example? Who's using these? Uh, is it already
Well,
being used in commercial?
they're the interesting thing, and I'll just throw this in, is that glasses were on every aisle. As you walk down these aisles, there's all kinds of, vacuum cleaners and all this stuff, right? There was always glasses, somebody using glasses. But, there was 150,000 people there. I didn't see one wearing glasses and using them as they walked down the aisles. So it's so new that I don't think people really understand how to use it yet, but it's coming. And again, each one of these vendors was trying to position their glasses as better than the other, right? And so at some point, somebody's going to take the lead and own the market and then be able to, use these in a lot of different aspects of how it works. And where I was going is I have this food service, you know, idea in my head, and my whole background has been food service. So as I'm going down the aisles, I'm saying, how can you use that vacuum cleaner for food service? How can you use those glasses for food service? How can you use those robots for food service? They're using them for completely different things, right? So
Right.
so that's where I kind of went with that, and yeah, it was wild, and again, I'm expanding. I'm going to some other conferences that are not related to food service because I think there's a value in that and understanding it.
I think and we've had this discussion,
Yes,
Mark. Um, we as consultants absolutely need to be looking outside of anything that has to do with food service. And look at all the medical equipment that has made its way into food service.
yes,
Why are things like that at the consumer, the CES, and not at some of our show? I mean, we've got to get outside of our own food service
yes,
box and see how other technologies that exist and are being used every day in other
yeah.
settings need to
Well,
be
and
in our kitchens.
that's a good lead in too. I mean, I think we could talk about this for 5 hours on this, and I guess I want to be respectful of both of your time, but maybe to kind of wrap this up a little bit, maybe I could get a perspective on from both of you related to where are you going now to learn about what's coming in the future, to be able to support your clients how they need to be supported. So maybe, I don't know, Karen, why don't you start? I know you spend a lot of time on the internet and YouTube and those kinds of things, but where are you getting the most value and in learning about all of this stuff?
Well, I would say at this time, not so much conferences as engaging in research and discussions about how technology is being used in just a lot of reading as to how technology is being applied to in other industries,
Yes,
and how we can borrow from that. And also, I feel that it's critical for me to understand some of the innovations that are occurring in food, and in some cases, the creation of
yes,
food
yes,
because we can't bifurcate equipment and design and food. They aren't, yes, of course they're separate things, but we have to look holistically at what is happening on all fronts. So that's a long-winded way to answer your question.
totally. Laura?
Well, I had a similar experience to yours at the CES, Mark, when I went to the materials handling conference,
Hmm.
and or show rather, excuse me, and that was fantastic. Same kind of thing, like walking this floor. Just I'm looking at Amazon packaging in a warehouse and beer distribution and yada yada yada. But walking through that, I was there looking for AGVs and tugs and movers in particular, as well as 1,000 other things. But same kind of thing. It got my brain spinning for how I could take all of those things and relate them back to food service.
Uh-huh.
I will also say I kept running into a who moved my cheese situation because you can't get robots to go into refrigeration yet. 2 years. So the moment we do that, I'm going to be really excited. But I kept wanting a robot that would be able to set up all my prep stations, overnight. So then chefs come in and there's no going back and forth to the walk-in cooler and everything. They got it all, yada, yada, yada. That's definitely one thing. I do actually like conferences. I mean, they do kind of take a lot of time, so I think there's balance to that, but I like them for seeing what's out there, and I also like them for the conversations, similar to this one, because I also think that what is going to be successful in good design in the future is going to have to solve a need. And so I think you have to stay really close to clients and people to figure out what those needs are. And as those needs change, thus then design will change. I'm definitely doing a lot of looking at shows in Europe, like Host and other things where
Yep.
I mean, just for the sake of how stuff has happened in the past, you have so many equipment manufacturers who are launching products that have been in Europe, and so I think that will continue because that is an avenue and a resource that's out there. I think there's also just a lot of trade resources online and such, equipment and everything, resources that are really, really helpful, kind of along the lines of what you were saying, Karen. But that's where my head's at.
This year, my goal is to go to the packaging, the big packaging conference, because my work, especially as a management advisory consultant, I spend so much time trying to help clients figure out how to package to go and grab and go food.
Mm-hmm.
It is, we need to get a packaging person on here, Mark, because it's not only is it costly, but it is hugely important as our industry shifts to so much takeout and home delivery. There needs to be exponential innovation on that side of the equation, and it is going on. I want to know more about that.
Well, again, I think we could go on for days talking about this, and maybe we should, right? Maybe we should have another follow-up to this like we did with you, Karen. But, just to kind of recap what I didn't hear you two say about where you go for information is ginger. Okay. And I think there's an opportunity only because I've learned so much in the last, I don't know, 6 months or a year about ginger, and ginger knows everything and remembers everything. So if we talk about packaging, she'll go out and find solutions for me, but then, and we talk about, okay, storage space for packaging in the kitchen.
Right.
She'll come up with solutions to help me do that. So I encourage you both to think about ginger. Maybe it's George and I don't know, Harry or something on your side. But yeah, and again, I have two now. I have Ellie Mae and I have Ginger. So I have this group of anyway. So I appreciate the time and effort that you've put into this. I know you both had done some work on the internet before we got together. We did back and forth on emails, so I totally appreciate that. I appreciate the time here and the thought, and I encourage our audience to take whatever you make from this and go out and use your ginger to solve all these problems. So thanks, Laura. Thanks, Karen, for participating in this. And like I said, maybe we'll get together again sometime and talk even more about what's going on in the last 6 months. So
Seriously.
appreciate that. And thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark.